It's one of the fastest growing sectors of the market right now, but these are names you may not have heard of yet. Joining us today is Downey with TradeSmith. He is going to be going over 3 optics stocks and talking about this sector and why there is still a ton of opportunity for growth here. Lucas, I'm so glad to have you on the show. Always good to have new guests here. Would love to start out with your take on kind of the whole AI market. I know that is your specialty. It's an area that you are constantly looking in. And that big discussion this week especially is how much room can be left in this AI story. Have we reached the full growth, or is there still opportunity for investors here?
Bridget, thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, AI has really taken everybody by storm, including Wall Street. Over the past year, we have really come to understand that there are layers to the AI data center build out. I'm sure you're hearing that from other guests. They're building them day after day across this country and even globally. So what I try to do is look at all of the layers, and there's really 5 key tenets, 5 pillars to an AI data center. So the first part, right, that most of us know is kind of the infrastructure. So you think about land, you think about site development and all that type of stuff. Then you get into power, right? Because you got to power all of these data centers, okay? So that's your utilities, your generators, things like that. Then you got to cool everything. So there's that third layer that's cooling. Then you get into compute and memory. It's kind of like the brain of the AI data center. Micron just had blowout earnings. So this has been kind of the key bottleneck over the past year. And then as we're getting into today is that 5th layer, that's networking and connectivity. So you got to think in terms of, listen, there's high-speed networking, there's pipes, there's fiber, there's optics. All of this is being refreshed as people find new technologies to build these data centers.
Yeah, every area you just talked about, all those bottlenecks of where there's so much demand to build out all of the AI infrastructure around the country, really around the world, is where we're seeing so much growth. Again, Micron is a great thing to bring up this morning because it's what everyone's talking about. Their earnings are unreal. Seeing, I think, at least something over 80% margins, which is just unheard of in a market. So it just shows how much money is flowing into this area right now. And I also, that word bottlenecks, we had one of your colleagues, Keith Kaplan, the CEO of TradeSmith, was on just last month talking about those AI bottlenecks. So I'll link that interview at the end of this one to make sure you take a look at that, where he talks about some of those areas specifically. But this optics area, the cables involved in the build out of the AI data centers, it's not something that on this show we've covered all too much. I know we've heard a few different names here and there because they've seen tremendous growth, but the names that you have for us today are very, very different. So talk a little bit more about what this entire little group of stocks have in common, why there's such demand for them in this AI story right now.
So, if you think about the AI infrastructure CapEx, it's approaching $1 trillion, right? So this is big money that is being spent to upgrade basically the newest technologies out there. And so as it relates to networking and connectivity, there's this huge global shift that's happening away from copper and into optical links. So this is glass. This is using light, right? And so this gives these data centers a lot of interesting advantages. One is it can be less latency. Speed is very important, right? As we go in, we use these large language models. Everything's kind of refreshing and caching, right? Because there's just so much compute that is passing through all of the wires. Also, there's less heat that is involved when you have glass and fiber, right? And so that means you don't have to cool it as much. So there is a cost savings. And that is why there is this huge build out that is happening. And as we get into other stocks that we'll talk about, there are some players that are getting these multi-year deals with hyperscalers, right? So this isn't like a 2026 story. This is till 2030 and beyond. And that just goes to show just how big of a build out this is. And again, I just want to use the word bottleneck. There is only so much of this components to go around that we are starting to see bottlenecks in the optics space.
We're going to get to the 3 names where you see a lot of those bottlenecks happening right now. But before we do, I have one other burning question, and that's that these companies, they're not brand new. This isn't like new technology, is it? I feel like this is something that's been around for a while. It's just being repurposed and the demand is being renewed because of these data center buildouts. Is that right?
That's correct. So, yeah, some of these companies have been around for over 100 years. Companies are starting to see, wow, new technologies are coming about. Oh, look at what they're building out. And then you start to see that, oh, I want to get that technology into our data centers, right? And so when you think of optics, it's really 5 to 6 different layers to this. So the first thing is, you got to generate the light. Second thing is that it's got to travel through the fiber cables. Then you kind of have this traffic direction, right? That you have the signaling. Then you have the physical connections, right? Putting everything together. So this is all the suppliers. Then you have the manufacturing, the optical components. And then if you get real nitty gritty, you really have to keep the signals clean. So there's a cleaning component that goes into all of this ecosystem.
Yeah, you are clearly understand the technicals very well. And I know that this sector, the AI build out, is your specialty. And it's what you write about in your newsletter, the TradeSmith Investment Report. If you want to learn more from Lucas and his team at TradeSmith with specific information on some of the biggest, latest trends in the AI build out, well, good entry points on different names entering the race, and then times when it's time to cash out on some of the names you've invested in. That's what this newsletter covers. You can get a special offer for our MarketBeat viewers today by scanning the QR code or going to the link in the description to sign up for the investment report newsletter today through TradeSmith. Again, we've got that link for you in the description. Okay, Lucas, let's get into your list today and the first optic stock that you are looking at.
The first one we're going to be looking at is Amphenol, and this is ticker APH. Amphenol, it's one of the world's largest manufacturers of electronic connectors and interconnect solutions. So think about connections. They had some big acquisitions last year that's really helping them in the optics space. But I think the easiest way to think of them is, they're not making the lasers or the chips, but it's more that they are leading in the connectors, the cables, assemblies, all of that. It's a $200 billion market cap firm, and they just had one of the biggest earnings blowouts of the season. So revenues came in at $7.62 billion. This is way above the street analyst estimates of $7.08 billion. EPS also beat. Their guide was well above. And so I think these are the types of companies, right? They come out, they report, they beat, they raise, they tell you that, demand is very, very robust. And so these companies get re-rated. And so this is one of my favorite names to play the optical move.
Yeah, that earnings report is what stood out to me. I was just looking at it and was like, wow, this is quite an earnings beat for this company. Is this the first quarter that we've seen that from this company? Is it just starting, or have they had a track record over the last few quarters of kind of similar story?
They've had a track record of beating, but I think the magnitude of this latest beat is what kind of got everybody on their side of the boat. You start to see analysts start to revise their numbers higher. That is a key note that Wall Street's been behind the ball on this name. And again, it's just one of these multi-year segments that are playing out through the data center build out. So this is a great company. It's not slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, that's the question everyone has is it going to slow down? Can this growth story continue? Every time we talk about these kinds of AI infrastructure stories, I hear from viewers who say, well, it's already gone up so much. And this one has had a tremendous year. It's up about 71% in the last year. It's not the biggest AI growth story we've seen in a year, but it is already doing really, really well. So what is your outlook for growth for this one over the next few years? And what's your time horizon looking at this stock too?
Okay, so time horizon is very important. So we're definitely looking at multi-years, and this is one of those names that have double-digit revenue and earnings growth out for the next few years. So again, it's not a 2026 or even 2027 story. Out to 2028, this company is really starting to see the inflection points right now. So this is a core name in a space that really isn't stopping. And as we get into the second name, I think it'll make it clear just how big and just how widespread, the whole optical build out really is.
Now, before we get to that other name, another quick question about the optics layout, because we don't talk about it too often on the show. So for some people, it's really understanding the unique space that this company fills compared to the others we're going to get to. I really want to see a little bit about that competitive space in the optics area. Do some of these companies work together? Are they directly competing? Do they fill different needs within the optics space?
Yeah, so Amphenol, it's really physical connections. So you think high-speed connections, interconnects. So they're linking all of the components, right? So you got to think racks, you got to think servers, you got to think systems. And so every connection, it counts in the world when you're talking about moving in nanoseconds, right? And so this is a lot of different connections over a very robust ecosystem. And I think that's what makes Amphenol very, very unique here.
All right, so a unique first company and not a stock ticker we've ever had on the show before. So really good to hear new names that are doing so well and seeing some really strong earnings right now. Let's get to the second company on your list of optics companies you're watching.
Yeah, so the next one is a name that a lot of us have probably heard of, and this is Corning. The ticker is GLW, and they really are just fiber cables. I mean, is it as simple as that? And they are really at the center of the manufacturing of the next generation of optic cables. So they're really your global leader, foundational technology, data transmission. What is really interesting about this company is they have really linked some massive hyperscaler deals. So just recently, they had a deal with NVIDIA, and this is a U.S. manufacturing optical connectivity for AI infrastructure. And basically, Corning is going to increase their US-based optical connectivity 10x and US fiber capacity by more than 50%. Okay, so that was one deal. Then I believe it was last week, they announced a deal with Amazon. This is a multi-billion-dollar deal for US fiber manufacturing as well. So this is a huge name. They're linking a lot of these big companies that are not stopping the data center build out at all, right? And you're talking about cables that span oceans, okay? So this is a massive monumental build out that is happening. And this company is just right at the center of this whole revolution.
Yeah, you can absolutely see that in the price action on this stock. You look at the chart, and it's had a tremendous year. So going back to that main question that a lot of our viewers have when they look at these stocks is it's run up so much already. This is a name, like you said, many people are familiar with. But let's look at your time horizon and growth predictions on where this company could go. Those deals that you just said are a good indicator that that growth story may not be over yet.
Yeah, so this is really a 2028 story. So they recently were at a JP Morgan conference and they highlighted that their sales run rate is projected to reach 20 billion by the end of this year, 30 billion by 2028. Then they even ventured to say that 40 billion by 2030. So you got to see the longer term horizon here. Also for this year, EPS is slated to be $3.19. It's going to bump up to $4.21. And then it's going to accelerate to $5.75 in 2028. So I think this whole refresh, this revamp, it's got a lot of excitement. That's why you're seeing the stock start to perform. But what I think is these numbers can be revised higher because if they can link deals with NVIDIA, they can link deals with Amazon, there's going to be more hyperscalers that are going to want to work with Corning.
Yeah, that growth projection is really interesting to see how much demand they're expecting. I think the next question is, can they keep up with that demand? How's production going? How's that backlog of theirs going to do with all of this demand coming in?
Well, I think that's why they're partnering so that they can build out further capacity. I think that was the key takeaway whenever they launched this huge deal with NVIDIA, because there just isn't enough components out there. So we have to build that capacity. So they're taking funds from NVIDIA to kick everything off. And then they're going to be bringing more and more manufacturing through the US. So this is a big construction story that is multi-years in the making.
Yeah, that's the thing with these AI infrastructure stocks is it's not just a one-time deal. The deal is signed and that's the only contract they have coming in. That build out takes so long. So the story and growth story is also longer for a lot of these names, even though they've already seen some really good performance so far. I want to talk about what you mentioned with the last stock, and that's analysts catching up to the kind of growth that they're seeing. And you look at this one, it's already soaring above that consensus price target. We are starting to see some higher price revisions. But what do you think about where the analyst community sets on their price targets for a stock like this versus what we're seeing in the orders and the backlog and the demand for what they're offering?
I think as more and more of the analysts start start to learn about these companies, right? They start to speak to these companies. I think they're going to come to the realization that their numbers are too low. Instead of just looking at analyst price targets, I look at what they're saying in terms of the EPS. And every time they launch any of these deals, right, whether it's with NVIDIA, whether it's with Amazon, you see that a group of analysts just revise their earnings up. So if you can imagine, it just continues to go up and to the right. And I look at these numbers on a weekly basis and, I'm plotting them in my models, but it is just clear as day that the analysts are always playing catch up with a lot of these leaders. And so I think their price targets are going to continue to just go up and up. You've been hearing lately how people are starting to all of the sudden raise Micron numbers, right? They literally sat on it for all of a year, and then it goes for like 1,000 points higher where they come out and they raise. So I think you're going to start to see that in the optical space as well.
That's such a great comparison of the analyst community catching up on Micron. And we heard from so many viewers who said, well, Micron's already run its course. It's already gone up too high. We don't want to get in now. And then we continue to see that raise that you were talking about. So relying on what the analysts are saying, they're also just trying to figure out exactly what these companies are valued at because this AI build out story is so unique and it's happening so rapidly. So I think that's a great point. I think it's also important to point out on your newsletter, you were recommending MU how long ago?
This was last year. So we were very fortunate to be way ahead of analysts and really Wall Street on that trade.
Yeah, that's exactly what you cover in your newsletter. So again, if you want to take a look at Lucas's newsletter where he is focused in on getting ahead of that AI story and sharing it with his subscribers, you can check out this special offer by scanning the QR code or going to the link in the description for, again, a special rate at joining the investment report for TradeSmith. It's a great way to get ahead of some of these names and the growth story that is still very much unfolding. Well, Lucas, let's get to that last name in the optics story that you are following today.
Yeah, so the last name is going to be Ciena, and this is ticker CIEN. And I like to think of them in terms of a traffic cop, right? So they're routing the light speed signals to all of the destinations, right? So it's got to make sure it gets to where it needs to go. They've got deals with hyperscalers, and you just have to think of the scale that's across all the optical network and think of it as a distributed AI system, right? There's all these clusters and all these different locations. So Ciena really specializes in making sure that everything gets to where it needs to go. And you know what? They also have some software, they have automation tools, but this is a critical component player to hyperscalers. It's all about bandwidth and just really moving all of that data, getting it to where it needs to go.
This is a name we've had on the show before. I've heard this one before, but I think for me, this sector is so new. It's hard to differentiate what areas these three different companies fill. So can you share a little bit more about how Ciena is providing a different product than the other two names we just shared?
Sure. So just think in terms of systems, traffic, direction. It's really more of an intelligent networking systems where they're routing light, they're optimizing bandwidth, and they're also reducing congestion that can happen with all of these different interconnects. They're really key of making sure that all of the data that is being transmitted, that it gets exactly where it needs to go. And listen, sometimes you've got thousands and thousands of different packets of data that are communicating all over the place. Ciena is going to make sure that all of that gets to where it needs to go.
Yeah, so you can have the best memory chips out there, you can have the best compute space, but unless it has a good connection, we know this in cameras. If we don't have a good cord connecting our camera to our system, nothing works. So that connector is just as important and such a critical component of the whole data center AI story. So this is a great company to look at, but the chart on this one is a little bit different than the other two that we just covered. Ciena is in a little bit of a pullback right now. It's had a tremendous run up, still up nearly 500% for the year. So was it just naturally time for that pullback because of the amazing run the stock has had? What's your thought on what is happening with this stock chart today?
Sure. I think, as we are in the heat of summer, we've got a lot of rebalancing that's happening this week. You got the Russell reconstitution. Even next week, you've got a big quarter end rebalance. I mean, we're talking serious money is just being mechanically moved around. And so different stocks are getting moved all over the place. They're getting moved up, they're getting moved down. This is a wonderful name, and I think this is a great buying opportunity on a pullback. I think this is a long run story. The reason for that, if you go back to their earnings, they blew away EPS. $1.64. This is versus estimates of 146. Revenues were up and away. Also, for their full year guide, they took that up to 6.3 billion, well above the estimates of 6.15 billion. They noted margin expansion. All right, these are the things that you want to hear. Also, for full year 2026, estimates are for EPS to come in right around $6.53. It's going to go up to $9.65 next year, and then it's going to balloon to $14.28. One thing I like to focus on is where is the earnings, right? Because if earnings continue to go up, and they are, every time you run the numbers, eventually the stock is going to follow those earnings. I mean, that's why we invest in the first place, right? To get a share of future earnings. I think this one is in the penalty box, and it's a great entry for a very big long-term story.
Yeah, I think it's so key for investors to focus on those earnings and to focus on the fundamentals of how much money is this company bringing in and what are they expected to continue bringing in the future. But right now, especially this week, it feels like there's so much market sentiment tied to the entire AI growth story. And so would love to hear your thoughts for this name as well as the other names we covered in this video, just talking about how to navigate the different fears and the headlines that can come about when we see these random pullbacks in the entire big tech market, when we start to see renewed fears of an AI bubble. This has been the ongoing ebb and flow story in AI stocks for really the last 2 years, almost, especially the last year. What do you do with those kinds of moments in the market?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, one thing that we specialize at TradeSmith Investment Report is we also are looking at money flows. And so that's where I spent a lot of my career on institutional trading desks trying to understand, like, is this a real pullback or is it more of a rotational pullback? One thing that I found that was very interesting over the past couple of years is a lot of stocks used to move in these sectors, right? So you'd get long tech, you'd get long, this other area. But then we started to notice that markets were moving more thematically, right? And so you started to see these baskets start to really shape up together. So maybe memory and storage started to move, maybe optical. And I think as long as you're kind of following the money and you're realizing that there's just rotations that are happening as these stocks are pulling back, it leads us to believe that this isn't, market money coming out of the market. It's just people just doing rotations for all different types of reasons. And it all comes back to a couple of things. One is earnings continue to get revised higher. And it's not day after day. It has been month after month, nonstop. And even still, if you just listen to earnings, we're about to be at earnings season in the next couple of weeks. Just like people were wrong about Micron, the last 3, 4 quarters in a row, they're probably going to be wrong on a lot of these companies. And so I think people should step back. There's going to be some volatility in the summer. There's going to be some volatility all the time. But I think if you are looking for high quality companies, right, where they've got great management, they have these long-term deals, you got to think big, massive themes, then these are the companies that you're going to want to be focused on. And last, I would say, is as long as the earnings, right, as long as analysts continue to take those numbers up, chances are the stock is going to be re-rated higher after the shallow correction happens.
Such good information for investors today. Lucas, thank you so much for your time. It was so great to have you on the show. Again, if you want to learn more about the AI bottleneck story and where so much of this money is flowing for the build out of the entire AI infrastructure, make sure to watch this video with Keith Kaplan we had on last month. It has so much good information about the AI story and some specific stocks that are very interesting in the AI build out story too. You can watch that full interview here.